Is she dying? No? Then it can wait. Your sister is panicking on the side of the road. What do you want me to do about your little stomachache? My father hung up on me while I was collapsing in the rain outside a Waffle House. Appendix ruptured. Phone dying in my hand. My mother didn't come that night either. She showed up the next day only to try checking me out early because the bill was getting too expensive. A stranger, a mechanic named Neil, was the one who carried me to his truck and saved my life. His wife Marlene sat by my bedside for 4 nights while my own parents protected their image. 16 years later, they flew to my door in Tennessee thinking they could still summon the daughter they threw away. They didn't know my sister had already bought her own ticket. They didn't know the truth. She was finally ready to scream. My name is Colleen Merritt, 32 years old. If you've ever been told your pain could wait while someone else's emergency came first, comment "pain" below. This is the night everything they buried came back to destroy them. Subscribe. You won't want to miss what happened when they rang my doorbell. Sunday mornings in Franklin usually start the same way. Owen comes off shift around 6. Ronan asks for pancakes. Millie asks for the one shaped like a dog. And I stand at the counter drinking coffee I made too strong because I was somewhere else in my head. This was not Sunday. This was Tuesday, the 14th of April. And I had just set my coffee down. The message request sat at the top of my Facebook in gray text. Suzanne Bates. A name I had not scrolled past in years. A name that did not come up in my house. My mother, writing to me the way a stranger writes to a stranger. I did not open it. I set the phone face down on the counter. Here is something I have learned in the last 16 years. My body knows what shock is before my brain catches up. It does not run. It sets the cup down. It does not shake. It watches its own hands go very still. I got Ronan dressed. I checked Millie's backpack for her show and tell rock, which was actually a piece of asphalt from our driveway that she had named Peter. I drove them to school with my phone face down on the passenger seat, because I did not need to know what my mother wanted at 7:45 on a Tuesday. I was at work by 8. Franklin Family Dentistry. Dr. Corinne Ashworth had a full book that morning, so I did what I always do. I put on my scrubs. I washed my hands twice. I opened my first chart. Mrs. Holbrook was 71 and had lost her husband 3 weeks earlier. She sat in my chair and started crying before I had even lowered the light. He always came with me. He would hold my purse. I put my gloved hand over her ungloved one. I did not tell her about the message. I said, "Mrs. Holbrook, breathe with me. In, out. That's it. 2 more. That is what I do. I take care of the mouths of women who have been left. I do it well. And in 16 years, I have never once mentioned my own mother while doing it. I got home at 5:30. Owen was already there, coming off a night shift with Nashville Fire Rescue 8, still smelling faintly of hospital antiseptic and diesel. He kissed the top of my head the way Papa Neil does. He picked Millie up. He put Ronan on his hip. He did not ask. I waited until the kids were down. Then I slid the phone across the kitchen table. Owen read the message twice. His mouth did the thing it does when he takes a breath before speaking, so I know something honest is coming. Your father is very sick, he read out loud. Congestive heart failure. He's on the transplant evaluation list. We need to talk. May we come to Franklin next weekend? He put the phone down. He turned his wedding ring 3 times, which is what he does when he is doing math. This is your call, love. Whatever it is, I've got you either way. I nodded. You want to sleep on it? I want to call Papa Neil first. Owen went upstairs to shower. I went out on the back porch with the phone and dialed the number I have called from every kitchen I have ever lived in. Neil answered on the second ring. He was drinking iced tea. I could hear the ice. Sweetheart, they found me. He was quiet for 4 seconds. You already made this decision, honey. You just have to feel it now. I laughed. It came out dry. Do you need me to drive down? Not yet. but maybe by the weekend. Okay. We hung up. I sat on the porch for a while. The tulip poplar in the yard had just put out its first green. I went back inside. I stood at the kitchen counter and looked at the second drawer from the top, on the left of the refrigerator. I did not open it. To understand why I did not open that drawer that night, why the first thing my body remembered was rain and a payphone that was not there anymore, I have to take you back to the last rainstorm I waded in. Louisville, Kentucky, 2009. I was 16 years old, and my sister Whitney was 18 and a freshman at Bellarmine University, which is where our parents' money went. Bellarmine, and Whitney's Honda Civic, and Whitney's dorm room mini fridge, and the extra grocery money my mother wired her every other Tuesday because Whitney was, in my mother's exact words, stressed about a statistics quiz. I worked the closing shift at Steak and Shake and drove a 2001 Accord I had bought with my own tips. There was a calendar on the refrigerator door in our house. It was one of those free calendars a real estate agent leaves in the mailbox. On it, my mother had written, in her looping Sunday school hand, the schedule of Whitney's life. Whitney's calls home. Whitney's coming home for laundry. Whitney's Saturday brunch with Mom. It said Whitney's day on Sundays. It said nothing for the rest of us. 2 weekends before it happened, Whitney called crying because she had a flat tire on Bardstown Road and asked my father to come. He went. He was gone 2 hours. When he came back, his hands were not dirty. I remember noticing that. And then I remember not knowing what to do with the noticing, so I put it down. I put a lot of things down that year. October 15th was a Thursday. I woke up with a low ache in my belly and thought it was my cycle. By 4th period at Fern Creek High School, the ache had climbed and sharpened. I went to the nurse. She gave me 2 Advil. After school, I walked to my best friend Brianne Sundstrom's house in the Buccal neighborhood, off Bardstown Road. Brianne's mom, Jeanette, made us grilled cheese and tomato soup. I ate 1 bite. The pain had crossed over from my center to my lower right side, and I could not sit up straight anymore. "You look green," Brianne said. "Text your mom to pick you up." "I'll walk. It's not that far." I left Brianne's house at 9:52 at night. It was already raining. 43 degrees. I had a thin denim jacket and my Motorola Razr V3 and about $22 in my back pocket. By 10:15, I was leaning against a stop sign at the corner of Bardstown Road and the Watterson Expressway on-ramp. I could see the yellow sign of the Waffle House across the parking lot. I called my father at 10:30. He answered on the second ring. He was driving somewhere. I could hear the road. "Dad, I need help. Something's wrong. I don't think I can walk." "Where are you?" "Bardstown Road, near the Waffle House by Watterson." He stopped, or he pulled over, or he did whatever it was he did when he needed a second to arrange his voice. "Colleen, is she dying? No? Then it can wait. Your sister is panicking on the side of the road. What do you want me to do about your little stomach ache?" "Dad, I'll come after. Try to get inside somewhere warm. Don't make this bigger than it is." He hung up. I stood in the rain and looked at my phone. It was on 9%. Then it was on 7. Then it went dark. Then it went nothing. I walked 40 feet toward the Waffle House. The pain hit me on the 6th step, and I sat down on the concrete curb of the ATM enclosure. I remember thinking 2 things very clearly. The first was that I should try to make it inside so I could ask someone to call a cab. The second was that if I closed my eyes, I would not have to open them again. That was the first time in my life I felt anything like relief. I sat there for what my medical records later said was about 11 minutes. I did not move. Rain went down the collar of my jacket. My knees stopped shaking, which was the wrong sign. I know now that meant I was going into shock. But at 16, I only knew that the pain had gone from hot to strange, from sharp to gray, and my body seemed to be very far away from me and getting farther. Then yellow headlights cut the rain. A Ford F-150 pulled into the lot slowly. Navy blue. I heard the tires on the wet asphalt before I saw the truck. It stopped 6 feet from me. The driver's door opened. A man in a black Carhartt jacket got out. His boots were heavy. His hands were dark with something that looked like grease. He came around the truck and squatted down in front of me. He did not ask my name. "Where does it hurt, sweetheart?" I pointed to my lower right side. He pressed there, very gently. Then he took out a Motorola flip phone, the kind with a real antenna, and he dialed a number from memory. "Marlene, I need you at the ER entrance in 15 minutes. 16-year-old girl, right lower quadrant, guarding, cold sweat. I'm not waiting for EMS." He put the phone away. He picked me up like I was a bag of groceries and set me in the passenger seat of the truck. The seat smelled like cold coffee and Pennzoil. "You keep your eyes open, sweetheart, all right? You keep them open until we get there." Neil Redmond was 39 years old that October. He was skinny in the way men who work with their hands are skinny. Nothing wasted, nothing extra. His fingernails were shaped like small black moons. He had a wife named Marlene Redmond who was a registered nurse in the emergency department at Norton Hospital downtown, and every night before he closed up his shop in South Louisville, he called her to say when he'd be home. He never made it home that night. He drove me the 16 minutes from Bardstown Road to Norton downtown, singing along, very softly, to Simple Man, on the radio. Lynyrd Skynyrd. I remember because I closed my eyes, and then I opened them, and the words in the song were about a mother's voice, and I thought, briefly, ridiculously, that maybe I was already dying, and this was what a person heard before they went. Marlene was standing outside the ER entrance under the awning in her blue scrubs when we pulled up. Her hair was in a low bun. She was 45, taller than Neil, and she had a face that was not gentle exactly, but was, I would come to understand, competent in a way that felt like gentleness to a scared person. She looked at me for 3 seconds. She read my body the way I read a chart now. Then she said, without touching me, "Sweetheart, you're okay. I've got you now." They took me back. I remember the ceiling lights. I remember one nurse asking me if I was allergic to penicillin and me trying to say no, and my voice not coming out. I remember Marlene's hand on my forehead just before they put the mask on, and her thumb making a small circle there. The surgery took 90 minutes. The appendix had burst, but the surgeon caught it before it turned into full-body sepsis. In the language of the hospital, it was a save. In the language of what would happen next. A woman named Anna Marlowe had died in a motel room in Elizabethtown 4 months earlier, when her family took her out of Norton against medical advice the day before her scheduled surgery, and Marlene had been that girl's nurse. And Marlene had spent the 4 months after Anna's death trying to sleep. It was, in Marlene's private language, something more. Neil sat in the waiting room and drank a cup of styrofoam coffee. Later he would tell me that he did not sit down, actually, until 40 minutes in. Later he would tell me that his father had died in 1971 of a burst appendix in a bedroom in rural Kentucky because they could not afford the hospital, and that Neil had been 10 months old, and that his mother had spent the rest of her life apologizing to a dead man. Later he would say, "Every time I passed somebody slumped over on a corner, I asked myself, is this the one your daddy needed?" He would tell me all of this many times over the years. That night he said none of it. He just drank his coffee. While I was still in recovery, Marlene took my student ID out of the wallet in my jacket pocket and dialed my house. No one answered. She called again at midnight. No one answered. She called at 3 a.m. because Marlene believed in the ethical obligation of a phone call after a certain hour. My father answered on the 4th ring. His voice was groggy. She told him where I was. She told him what had happened. She told him that the appendix had ruptured before we got in and that I had been 15 minutes from something much worse. "We'll come when we can." "Sir, your daughter almost died." "I heard you, ma'am." She called back 3 more times over the next 8 hours. My mother finally answered the 6th call, at 11 the next morning. My mother's voice was flat and very awake. "We'll be there in the afternoon. Please stop calling." She arrived at Norton downtown at 2. She did not bring anything. She did not go to my room. She went to the front desk and asked for a discharge form. Marlene came out of my room and saw her at the counter and walked across the ER lobby in her scrubs. "Mrs. Bates, your daughter is 1 day post-op from a ruptured appendix. She's not stable enough to leave. That's a medical judgment, not a family one. If you sign her out AMA, I'm required to document it on her chart, and I'm going to call the attending surgeon before you get to the parking lot." My mother did not say anything for a long moment. Then she said, "I see." She left 15 minutes later. She did not come into my room. I was already awake by then and knew, from the sound of 2 women's voices in the hallway, that my mother had come and gone. Marlene sat down beside my bed. "Sweetheart, when you're stable enough to move, you can stay a few nights at our place. We have a spare room. It was my sister Bonnie's. It's quiet." I stayed 4 nights at Norton and then 4 more nights on Bonnie Redmond's old bed in the Redmond spare room in South Louisville, under an Amish quilt that Marlene had sewn herself. Everyone always asks how a stranger became my mother. She didn't become. She just refused to leave the room. Marlene drove me home on the 8th day. My mother opened the front door of our 2-story house in Highview and looked at me the way you look at a receipt you did not expect to find at the bottom of a purse. She did not hug me. She did not ask about the incision. Her first sentence was, "You embarrassed us in front of those people, Colleen." My father was in the garage. He did not come out. My sister Whitney came home from Bellarmine that weekend and did not meet my eyes at dinner. She said hello, and then she looked at her plate. Marlene handed my mother a piece of prescription pad paper with her home phone number written on it in her round, careful nurse's handwriting. My mother took it between 2 fingers and set it on the entryway table without looking. She did not say thank you. At the door, Marlene turned back to me. "Any time, any weekend. You call, I come." I put the mercy of that sentence in the drawer of my desk in my bedroom and did not open the drawer for a long time. For the rest of my junior year and all of my senior year, I lived in 2 houses. During the week, I slept at my parents'. Every weekend, every school break, every Thanksgiving, I was in South Louisville with Neil and Marlene. My father and I spoke to each other in shorter and shorter sentences until we were down to pass the salt. And yes, sir, nobody fought, nobody screamed. There was only quieter and quieter distance, the way a car pulls away from a curb. Marlene had a sister named Bonnie Vance who was a kindergarten teacher in Louisville and 44 that year, and childless by choice. Bonnie helped me apply to community college. She read my personal essay 6 times. She said, "Write about what you learned, not what you lost. There's a difference." I graduated from Fern Creek High School in May of 2011. I was 17, one of the youngest in my class, because my parents had petitioned the school district to let me start kindergarten before the October cutoff, which meant that at every milestone of my education I was 1 lap behind the calendar and 1 lap ahead of my body. Neil, Marlene, and Bonnie sat in the 3rd row at graduation. My father and mother were at Bellarmine, watching Whitney walk on the same afternoon. Whitney had chosen to graduate on my day and had not asked me to move it. There is one photograph from that graduation. It is me in a navy gown holding a plastic-wrapped rose, standing between Neil and Marlene, with Bonnie on Marlene's other side. Marlene is looking at me the way people look at the ocean. I went to Jefferson Community College for dental hygiene. I lived at the Redmonds the whole time. I worked evenings at the Cracker Barrel out by the airport. I did well. I got my license in May of 2013. That was the spring Marlene's hands started shaking. She was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, that summer. The doctor gave her 3 to 5 years. She lived exactly 5, minus 15 days, which is very like her. I spent the next 2 years at the Redmond house, working at a dental practice on Bardstown Road, coming home to sit with Marlene in the evenings while Neil made supper. I read to her from a paperback of Peace Like a River by Leif Enger, 1 chapter a night. When her hands got too weak to hold the book, I held it for her. When her voice got too soft to speak more than a few words, I stopped needing her to. One February evening in 2015, Marlene said from her recliner, very slowly, "Sweetheart, you can't spend your youth in my kitchen. You need a life. Not because I want you to leave, because I need you to come back to me having lived." I found a job in Franklin, Tennessee, a practice called Franklin Family Dentistry, run by a woman named Dr. Corinne Ashworth. I gave notice. I told Marlene. She cried. The first time I ever saw her cry, and it was not from sadness. It was from something much better than sadness. Neil drove me down in March, 2 hours 40 minutes on I-65 South, in the same Ford F-150 with the same coffee and Pennzoil smell. He carried my mattress up 2 flights of stairs to a studio in Cool Springs and would not let me help. That night, I called Marlene from an air mattress on the floor of an empty apartment. "How is it there?" "Quiet." "Good. Quiet is what you deserved. Before I take you into the years that made me the person my parents met at my kitchen table this April, tell me something. Have you ever had someone become family who did not share your last name? Someone who kept showing up even when they didn't have to? Drop their first name in the comments. Just their first name. Let's honor them together. I met Owen Merritt on Christmas Eve of 2015 at St. Mary's Cathedral in downtown Nashville. He was helping an 80-year-old woman up the stone steps with her walker. He was 24 and off duty from Nashville Fire Rescue 8, which meant he was still in the Navy cargo pants and the boots. He was tall in a way that surprised his own shoulders. I helped the woman to her pew. He sat 2 rows behind me. Afterward, he came up to me under the vestibule light. "Tell me your last name so I can look you up. Not stalking. Just planning." We went to a Waffle House on West End at 12:14 a.m., and I told him, laughing, for the first time about it, that a Waffle House had once saved my life. He did not press. He said, "Then let's give another one a good tip." His partner, Tim Delaney, had died on a call the previous July. Owen carried Tim's badge in his wallet for the rest of the year. He would tell me about it 2 months later on a walk. He would not tell me all of it. That, too, I understood. We were married on March 3, 2018, in the front room of the Redmond house in South Louisville. 22 people came. Neil pushed Marlene down the makeshift aisle in her wheelchair. She was breathing through a BiPAP mask by then, and her hands lay very still in her lap, and she wore a soft blue cardigan over a dress Bonnie had let out 3 times to accommodate the mask. My parents were invited. They did not come. Whitney sent a Hallmark card with a check for $100. I never cashed the check. Neil gave a speech. It was 1 sentence long. I never had a daughter. I had one for a while. Before the ceremony, Marlene called me over to her chair. Her hands would not let her open the small hinged jewelry box in her lap, so I opened it. Inside was a plastic bracelet, the kind hospitals put on wrists, with typewriter print that read, "Bates, Colleen M., 10-15-09, 16F, Norton, downtown." She had cut it off my wrist 8 days after my surgery. She had kept it in her jewelry drawer for 8 years and 4 months. She had pinned a small piece of paper inside the lid. It said, in her tremoring hand, "I saved this so you would never forget you were worth saving." Marlene died 19 days later, 22nd of March, 2018. Neil held her fingers when she stopped breathing. He did not cry in front of me. He cried afterward in the garage with the door shut, on a stool that had been his father's. I named my son Ronan Merritt when he was born the September after Marlene died. Ronan was Marlene's father's name. He had been an Irish laborer in eastern Kentucky, and he had died in the same year Neil's father died, 1971, of a heart attack in a coal miner's boarding house before Marlene had ever met him. I had learned the name months earlier from a page in an old family Bible on Marlene's bookshelf, and I had chosen it without telling her. I had liked the idea that Marlene would be with me when I named the baby, and she was. Millie came in June of 2020, in the first month of the lockdown. We named her for Owen's great-grandmother, Mildred. We bought a small house in Franklin in 2021. 875 square feet, 3 bedrooms, a tulip poplar in the yard. Neil sold half of his garage in 2023 and started driving down 4 times a month to stay with us. He taught Ronan how to check the pressure in a bicycle tire on Ronan's 6th birthday. "You always check both sides," Neil said, kneeling in the driveway with a brass gauge in his hand. "Left, right. Never assume the good one covers the bad one." Bonnie retired from teaching the following summer. She started calling me every Sunday night at 9. "You have a good voice today, sweetheart," she would say. "You sound like Marlene when she was your age." In December of 2024, Bonnie called me on a Wednesday. Her voice was careful. "Your father was fired. First Bluegrass. Some kind of internal audit. Loans. A lot of loans. He is not going to be arrested, but he is going to have to pay it back." "Okay. You are going to want to sit with that." "Okay." Neil called an hour later. He was drinking iced tea. "That man built a house of glass and threw the last of himself into it. My father died in 1971 of a burst appendix. Nobody took him. I was 10 months old. My mother spent 28 years apologizing to a dead man. I made a decision at 19. I was never going to be the mother who apologized. I was going to be the guy who drove. Your father, sweetheart, he never made that decision. He is still the boy in the front seat." I did not answer my mother's message on Tuesday. I did not answer it on Wednesday. On Friday morning, the 17th of April, I sat with a cup of coffee and I opened it and I read it. "Sweetheart, your father is very sick. Congestive heart failure, diagnosed in February. He's on the transplant evaluation list. We need to talk to you. May we come to Franklin next weekend? Just for a few hours. Whitney doesn't know yet. Please." "Mom." I sat for 20 minutes. Then I typed, "Sunday, April 26th, 10 a.m. My address is 4218 Maple Ridge Court, 2 hours only." She replied in 4 minutes. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I counted the thank yous. 3. I put the phone down. I called Neil. "You want me down there Sunday morning?" "Yes, but arrive after they've been in the house for an hour." "Copy." Saturday I cleaned the house, not to make it look nice, but to make it look like ours. I did not put out photographs I did not usually put out. I did not hide the ones I did. Owen came home early from a Saturday shift. After the kids went to bed, we sat in his truck in the driveway for 40 minutes. "What do you need me to do?" "Stand in the kitchen. Don't say anything. Just be there." "Copy that." I opened the second drawer from the top on the left of the refrigerator. I looked at the bracelet. I did not take it out. I closed the drawer. Sunday morning, I put Ronan and Millie next door at the Ellingtons. I would tell my parents the children were at a birthday party if they asked, and I would let the lie land wherever it landed. Roland and Suzanne Bates arrived at 10:57 a.m. in a silver rental Toyota Camry. My mother was in a pink cardigan and her Sunday school pearls. My father wore a striped button-down and a tie that had belonged to my grandfather. He was leaning on a hospital supply cane. His face was gray in a way that even my dental training could recognize. the color of a man whose blood was not moving the way blood should move. I opened the door. I did not hug them. My mother started crying on the step. I could not tell if the crying was for me or for the audience she thought was standing behind me. They sat on the couch. Owen brought out coffee. He nodded at my father. He did not shake his hand. My mother looked around the living room. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Smaller than I expected. She used the word sweetheart. She had not used that word to me since 2007. My father cleared his throat. He told me about the diagnosis: congestive heart failure, ejection fraction in the mid-40s. On the transplant list, though at 62, and with his condition, unlikely. My mother filled in the parts he could not say without coughing. Then she got to the ask. "His COBRA runs out in June, honey. 18 months since the job. He isn't eligible for Medicare for 3 more years. The marketplace plans are prohibitive with his condition. Kentucky Medicaid, we can apply, but we'd need a good file. And the premiums, even for the marketplace, we can't cover them alone. Is there any way you could help? Even a little? Or perhaps someone in the medical field you know who could advise?" My father looked at me for the first time. "Just help your family, Colleen. Once. That's all I'm asking. Once." I looked at my mother's hands. They rested one on top of the other on her knee. They were soft. There was no callus at the base of her thumb. She was not lifting anything. She was not helping anyone. "I'll think about it." I did not say yes. I did not say no. I did not say what I was thinking, which was that I had been helping my family since I was 16 years old. I helped by disappearing. I helped by not mentioning the incision. I helped by graduating on the same afternoon as my sister and not asking anyone to choose. I helped by never once, in 11 years of Christmas cards from Bonnie and Neil, sending them a photograph of my children. That is a lot of helping, and they had not noticed any of it, because they were not looking. The doorbell rang at 11:58. My father set his coffee cup down slowly, the way a man does when his body is deciding whether to be surprised. My mother's shoulders lifted a full inch. Owen went to the door. I heard the deadbolt turn. I heard boots in the entryway. Neil walked into my living room. He was wearing his black Carhartt jacket and a Louisville Cardinals ball cap and jeans that were older than my children. He carried 3 paper cups of Starbucks in a cardboard tray. He walked past my mother without looking at her. He walked past my father without looking at him. He came to my chair and he kissed the top of my head. Papa Neil, my parents, Roland, Suzanne. He looked at my father for 4 seconds. Then he looked at my mother for 4 seconds. Then he pulled out the chair at the head of the coffee table and sat down. He set the coffees on the table. He handed one to my father. "Black, right?" Marlene used to remind me. My father took the cup with both hands. He did not drink it. Neil said, "I heard there was a family meeting. I brought coffee." My mother opened her mouth. She closed it. She looked at my father. My father was looking at the coffee. "There is a lot to talk about," I said. "But first I want to enjoy this coffee." I lifted mine. Neil lifted his. Owen came into the doorway of the kitchen and leaned against the frame. He did not lift a cup because he did not have one. 3 cups, not 4. Not a cup for me, because I already had my own coffee, in my own house, in my own kitchen. I have thought about that math a lot. My parents left at 12:30. My mother reached for a hug on the doorstep. I did not close my arms. She patted my back once and then patted the air behind me. My father did not try. He said, "Thank you, Colleen." He said, "Colleen, please." He did not finish either sentence. They drove back to the Hilton Franklin. Owen walked back inside. Neil sat down at my kitchen table. I brought the kids home. Ronan asked if the man in the pink shirt was his grandfather, and I said, yes, technically. Millie asked if he was going to teach her how to change a tire. I said, no, honey, Papa Neil does that. We put the kids to bed at 7:45. At 8, Neil poured 3 shots of Buffalo Trace, and we sat in the kitchen. That wasn't about insurance, he said. That was about repositioning. He wants a paper trail that says his family loves him. Medicaid Kentucky requires you to certify the state of your household. Spouse, adult children, whether they contribute, whether there's family support. He wants a form he can point to. He wants a Christmas photograph he can leave out on the coffee table when the neighbors come over. He wants a story. Insurance is the wrapper. Owen leaned back. How much of that is Roland and how much is Suzanne? All of it is Suzanne. Roland doesn't have the energy to build anymore. He just wants to lie down. I opened my laptop. I typed an address into Google Maps that I had not spoken out loud in 18 years. 3312 Crestwood Lane, Louisville, Kentucky. I had seen the pickup truck of my father parked in front of that house at least 9 times between the ages of 13 and 18. The first time I saw it, I was 13, in the passenger seat of my mother's car, driving her to a Sunday school planning meeting, and she had said, "Oh, your father is with a client. He said he might have to stop by a client's house today." I had believed her because I was 13. The second time, I asked. She said, "He works with a lot of people, Colleen." The third time, I did not ask. By the 8th time, I had trained myself not to see the truck at all. Google Street View showed me a 1-story brick house painted pale green with a magnolia tree in the front yard. I opened the Jefferson County property records. I searched by address. The property had been owned from 2005 to 2021 by a woman named Cheryl Prescott. Cheryl Prescott had been employed at First Bluegrass Federal Credit Union, my father's employer, for the entirety of that period, as an administrative assistant. According to LinkedIn, she had retired to pursue personal interests in 2021. Neil looked at my screen over my shoulder. "You weren't making it up, honey." I sat for a long time. Monday morning, I called Brianne Sundstrom. She lived in Lexington now with her husband and 2 boys, and she worked in the finance office of a hospital. She was 32, which was strange to think about, because my brain had frozen her at 16. "Do you remember the night I got sick at your house? October 2009? I have been waiting 15 years for you to ask." She told me that a week after that night, her mother had called mine, hospital visit style, "Hey, just checking in on Colleen style." And my mother had said, in a voice Jeanette Sundstrom described later as clipped in a way she had never forgotten, "Please don't spread things, Jeanette. Colleen exaggerates when she's tired." Jeanette had hung up the phone. She had turned to Brianne. Brianne, 16 years old, at the kitchen table doing algebra, and said, "There is something wrong in that family. Stay close to Colleen if you can." Brianne had not asked me about it. She had waited for me to ask her. That is what a good friend does when a story is not hers to tell. "If you need me to fly down, I can be there by tomorrow night." "Save it. I might need you later this week." Tuesday evening at 8:03 p.m., I was drying a bowl with a striped dish towel and standing at my sink when my phone lit up. The text was from a number I had saved 16 years earlier under the letter W, my sister. I found their Southwest boarding pass on Dad's iPad when I stopped by Sunday morning to check on him. I booked my own for tomorrow. Nashville. I need to tell you something. I'm not okay. I've been trying to say this for a long time. I read the message twice. I set the towel down on the oven handle. I typed, "Land at BNA at 10:30 tomorrow, Wednesday. Come to my house at 11. Don't tell them you're coming." She replied 3 minutes later. "Okay." I set the phone face down on the counter, the way I had set it face down 8 days earlier when it had all begun. I looked up at Owen. He was standing in the doorway of the kitchen. Papa Neil stays. Bonnie is flying down tomorrow. And Whitney is coming. Understood. Wednesday morning was clear. The temperature was 58 degrees at 8 a.m. and headed towards 72. I made a pot of coffee and set it on the table on a wooden trivet Marlene had made me for my first Franklin apartment. I put out 4 coffee cups. Neil had slept in the guest room. Owen had gone in early to swap for the afternoon off. Bonnie Vance had flown in at 9:15 a.m. on Southwest, and Neil had picked her up in his F-150 and had her back at my house by 10. She wore a soft brown cardigan and had her hair in the same low bun Marlene used to wear. She hugged me at the door for a long time, and she did not say anything about how long, because that was not what she was there to say. The Ellingtons next door had the kids again. I had told Ronan they were going for a full morning of Legos. Millie had gone with a plastic dinosaur under each arm. At 10:45, I opened the second drawer from the top on the left of the refrigerator. I took out the plastic bracelet from Norton Downtown October 15, 2009. I placed it in the middle of the table, face down. Bonnie saw me place it. She nodded once. You put it face down. Good. Let them ask. At 10:57, the silver Camry pulled into the driveway. My mother came in first, with the same wine bottle from Kroger as a peace offering. $12.99, Cabernet. She set it on the table. Nobody moved it, and nobody touched it. My father followed her, slower now than 3 days ago, his cane going soft on the wood floor. He sat in the armchair. My mother sat in the chair beside him, which had been Marlene's Afghan chair before it was mine. Neil sat at the head of the table. Bonnie sat to Neil's left. I sat at the foot. Owen came in from the kitchen and stood in the doorway. Before we talk about insurance, I said, I want to talk about October 15th, 2009. My mother inhaled through her nose. She smoothed her skirt. She said in the rehearsed voice I remembered from every Christmas letter she had ever written, Sweetheart, that was so long ago. Your father was helping Whitney with a flat tire. She was on I-64. She was not on I-64. She was on Bardstown Road, 2 miles south of where I was. Dad said on the phone, Sister is panicking on the side of the road. He said that because he was not with her, and he did not know which road. Colleen, my father said, you don't remember it well. You were sick, confused. I have had 16 years to remember it well. My mother said, Well, Colleen, you always did have a dramatic memory. I looked at Neil. Neil placed his palm flat on the table. He did not slap. He did not press. He set it down the way a man sets down a wrench when he wants his hands to be free. The doorbell rang at 11:02. My mother's face did the thing I had waited 18 years to see. She looked at my father. Are you expecting anyone? No, I said. Owen went to the door. I heard the deadbolt. I heard the storm door. I heard the sound of my sister's boots crossing my entryway for the first time. Whitney was 34 years old. She was wearing a black blazer that used to be nice and was starting not to be. Her eyes were swollen. Her hand was shaking on the strap of a Coach purse that had been fashionable in 2017 and was now soft-cornered from carrying. She looked at my mother. She looked at my father. She walked past both of them and sat down in the empty chair to my right, and she set the purse on the floor. Hi, I bought my own ticket. My mother said, Whitney, honey, this isn't a good time. Yes, it is. She turned in her chair. She did not look at our parents. She looked at Neil, who nodded once. She looked at Bonnie, who nodded once. She looked at me, and she held it. The night Colleen was in the parking lot, I did have a flat. On Bardstown Road. Not I-64. Mom called me and said Dad was on his way from work. He wasn't on his way from work. When he finally showed up an hour and a half later, his clothes smelled like Cheryl Prescott's perfume. Chanel No. 5. She wore it every day at the credit union. I met her a few times at Dad's Christmas parties growing up. I knew that smell before I could name it. She took a breath. I put it together that night. I sat on the side of Bardstown Road for 90 minutes and I put it together. And when Dad finally showed up, he said, "Don't tell your mother where I was." And I didn't. My mother said, "This is... Mom." Whitney did not turn. Her voice went sharp. I said, "Stop. Let me finish." The room went very quiet. Neil poured a glass of water and slid it in front of Whitney. She drank half of it. By 2011, I was 20 years old. I understood the pattern. Every time Dad needed to be somewhere else, Mom made a phone call. My statistics quiz, my tire, my apartment lease, my move-in day at Bellarmine. Mom called. Dad went to Cheryl's. In exchange, I got Bellarmine paid for. I got a car. I got a divorce settlement paid for when I got out of my marriage in 2022. Every time I helped them lie, they paid me. I was trained. Not raised. Trained. She set the glass down. She still did not look at our parents. My father stood up halfway. "That's not exactly..." Bonnie stood up. Bonnie opened the small clutch purse she had brought from Louisville. She took out a piece of loose-leaf paper that had been folded into quarters. The folds were dark. She opened it and set it face up on the table. The handwriting on the paper was Marlene's, and the shake in the letters was the earliest tremor of the ALS she would not be diagnosed with for another 2 years. Suzanne Bates, Norton West Wing. April 3, 2011. Second visit. Something's wrong with that family. She keeps taking Roland's calls in the parking lot. Watch Colleen. "My sister spent 7 years watching your family," Bonnie said. She wrote down what she saw. She gave this to me 2 weeks before she died. She said, "When they come for Colleen, this will help." Neil, in the calmest voice I have ever heard him use, said, "You called me 3 weeks ago, Whitney. You had been drinking. You were at the East End AA meeting. You told me all of it. I told you to wait until Colleen was ready. She is ready now." My father sat back down in the chair. He put his hand over his mouth. He said from behind his hand, "I'm dying, Colleen." "I'm sorry you're dying, Dad. I really am. But you didn't come." And I did. My mother said, in a voice I had never heard from her in my life, "I did what I had to do to keep this family together." "You didn't keep the family together. You kept a story together. And you built it out of me." Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then I stood up. "I want to be very clear about 7 things. 1. I am not going to help with insurance. 2. There will be no money. 3. There will be no public reconciliation for the neighbors in Louisville. 4. You will not have access to my children. 5. You do not have grandchildren from me. 6. Any future contact goes through Bonnie, not through Whitney, not through this house. 7. If either of you comes to Franklin without asking, my husband, who is a paramedic, will drive the fire truck home from work. That is not a threat. That is a plan." My father stood up. He put his weight on the cane. He coughed once. "This is what strangers taught you?" "Yes." My mother walked to the front door. She paused with her hand on the knob. She turned back. Her face was the color of ash. "You always were the harder one to love." "I know. And I'm the one still here." Owen opened the door for them. He did not slam it after them. He closed it softly. Whitney sat where she was. Bonnie sat down beside her. Neil poured Whitney a coffee. I poured myself another. Owen came in from the kitchen and leaned against the wall. For 30 seconds, no one said anything. Then, Millie came running in from next door, ahead of schedule, with a plastic dinosaur in one hand and a peanut butter cracker in the other. She ran to my knee. "Mommy, can I have juice?" "Yes, sweetheart. Auntie Whitney is going to help me pour it." Whitney looked up. Her mouth did something I had not seen it do in 18 years. It smiled. She stood up. She went with me to the refrigerator. She held the glass while I opened the carton. Her hand shook. She used both hands. It doesn't have to be perfect. I forgot that. Millie took the juice with 2 hands. Thank you, Auntie. Whitney sat back down at the table. She put her face in her hands and cried for the second time in 20 minutes, quietly, and Bonnie put an arm around her shoulders and did not say anything. Neil looked at me across the table. He raised his coffee cup 1 inch. He set it back down. That was the closest he had ever come to a toast. That evening, after everyone had eaten and the kids had gone to bed, Whitney sat on my couch under the blue and cream Afghan Marlene had crocheted the winter she was diagnosed. She held a cup of decaf. She had not cried at the table. She cried a little on the couch, silently, in the way that a person cries when they have been keeping their breath very small for a long time. I sat down next to her. I did not put my arm around her. I just sat. I am going to lose the house. Okay, I don't know where to start. Start with the AA meeting on Thursday. That's Bonnie's job. She is going to sit next to you in the car and walk you to the door. Whitney nodded. I don't deserve you being kind to me. Nobody deserves anything. That's the whole point. She slept on the couch. I turned off the porch light and I locked the front door and I went upstairs to my husband. Neil drove Whitney back to Louisville on Thursday morning. They took a slow route because Neil knew that a person who was starting to be honest for the first time in 15 years should not be rushed to a highway. Whitney moved into Bonnie's spare room. She did not go to my parents' house. She started AA at First Christian Louisville on Thursday nights and Sunday mornings. She called me twice a week. She did not ask if she could come see the kids. She asked when I was ready. I called my parents 1 time in the 2 weeks that followed. If Dad needs to go to the ER, you can call Bonnie. Bonnie will relay to me. My mother started to cry. I said the sentence I had prepared for that specific moment. Mom, please stop calling. I hung up. My father went into the ICU at Norton downtown on the 12th of May with fluid in his lungs. Bonnie relayed the news. I sent white chrysanthemums to the 5th floor nurse's station with a card that said only, for the Bates room, please. My mother did not send a thank you. My mother did not need to. Neil drove down from Louisville on Sunday, May 17th. He had not been down since he had driven Whitney back. He arrived at 3 p.m. carrying a shoebox under his arm. The box was old, the corners were bent, and it had a strip of masking tape across the top on which Marlene had written, in her round, careful hand, for Colleen, when she is ready. M. Before I tell you what was on the tape Marlene left me, I want you to sit with this. What was the last sentence your body kept for you when your family told you not to? If you have one, type it in the comments. Not for the world. For you. This is the last part of the story, and I want you to hear the last part with your own truth close by. Neil set the shoebox on my kitchen table. He took out a Sony CFS-B31 cassette recorder that must have been 40 years old, and a package of AA batteries, and 1 cassette in a cracked plastic case, labeled in Marlene's handwriting. Colleen. 40 minutes. Ronan and Millie were asleep. Owen came in from the porch. Neil sat down. I sat down. Neil put the cassette in the machine and pressed play. Marlene's voice filled my kitchen for the first time in 7 years. It was slower than it had been in life. She was pausing for breath more than she used to, because by the time she had recorded this, in the winter of 2017, according to the date she set at the top, the ALS was in her diaphragm. But it was her, Colleen. If you're hearing this, then Neil finally handed it to you. I told him to wait until you asked. You always were slow to ask. And that was one of the many things I loved about you. Sweetheart, I want you to know 3 things. First, you are not a project. You were not someone I fixed. You were the person I was becoming when I met you. I was 45 years old and I had just lost a patient. 15 years old. Her name was Anna Marlowe. Her family took her out of Norton AMA the day before her surgery because they were scared of the bill. She died in a motel room in Elizabethtown. I could not save her. When Neil called me from that parking lot on the 15th of October, I did not become your mother. I refused to leave the room. There is a difference. Do you know the difference now? I hope so. Second, you do not have to earn a place at a table. You do not have to be the smart one, the strong one, the quiet one. You do not have to perform gratitude. You do not have to earn it. Just receive it. That was my hardest lesson too. Third, there is something I hope Neil tells you. My father's name was Ronan. He died in 1971. The same year as Neil's father. A different reason. Neil and I were both born of missing fathers. When you named your son Ronan, I do not know if you knew, but I like to think you did. I like to think somewhere in your body you knew. You are the daughter of a nurse who could not save her own patient. You are the mother of a boy named for two men who did not get to see us grow up. You are, sweetheart. You are the one who was built out of. But you are also the one who chose what to build. Chosen is stronger than blood. Do not let anyone tell you different. Not even me. I love you. I loved you before I met you. I will keep loving you after this tape stops. Do not turn it off before I finish. Colleen, you are enough. You are enough. There was a long breath, and then a soft laugh, and then, now go make coffee. Neil takes it black. The tape ran another 8 seconds of blank hiss, and then it clicked and stopped. Neil was smiling. He was also crying, which is a thing I had only seen him do once, and quietly. I stood up. I went to the counter and I made a pot of coffee. I brought 2 black cups back to the table. Black. Marlene reminded me. Neil took his cup and he did not answer, because he did not need to. 2 weeks later, on Sunday the 31st of May, Whitney came down for a weekend. Bonnie came too. Owen grilled. The kids ran barefoot on the grass chasing fireflies. Millie had drawn a picture of our family on a piece of copy paper and taped it to the refrigerator earlier that afternoon. On the drawing there were 6 figures, and one of them was a woman with wings who Millie had labeled Gamma Marlene. Earlier in the day, I had taught Millie how to check the pressure in the tires of her new bike. You always check both sides, Millie. Left, right. Never assume the good one covers the bad one. Papa Neil said that. He did. But it started with somebody else too. After dinner, Neil and I sat on the porch swing. He had a Coca-Cola in a glass bottle. The porch light was on. It was that yellow that porch lights are. You know, sweetheart, I have been thinking. That night in 2009, when I came around the corner and saw you against the ATM, my first thought wasn't, someone needs help. It was my dad. For a second I thought I was seeing my dad. And then I saw you were 16 and it wasn't him. And I did the thing my mother didn't get to do. I drove. Marlene and I never had our own kid because we couldn't. We tried. We stopped trying in '96. And then somebody's kid needed us. And we said yes. And you spent 16 years thinking you were the lucky one. Sweetheart, you weren't the lucky one. We were. Marlene made me promise something before she went. She said, Neil, don't let her spend her 30s earning it. And here you are, 32. Sitting on your porch with your father in a different word. You do not have to earn it. You are going to spend it living. I did not say anything. I took his hand. His fingers still had a little dark under the nails because a man who has been a mechanic since he was 19 never fully gets it out. I put my head on his shoulder. The kids were laughing in the yard. Ronan was calling Millie's name. The porch light was yellow. I closed my eyes.